Hello and welcome back to the Kumi Cherie podcast. I'm Kish Kumi Price, and my co-host Dina Cherie is not joining for this episode. As you know, we occasionally will have episodes where we are sharing a personal testimony, and I'd like to share some information with you all that has been helpful for me. It goes back to one of our episodes where we talked about the power of letting go. And in that episode, I talked about a name change and I talked about how I was called to change my name after a divorce, but I didn't go back to my maiden name, and God led me to embrace a new name, right? Like, and this wasn't conventional or traditional. It wasn't because I was remarried, but it was because of identity. And we've seen time and time again within the scriptures where God will call for certain people to identify with a different name, right? Abram and Sarai being changed to Abraham and Sarah, and Saul being renamed Paul, and um, Israel and Jacob. I mean, and there's different iterations of this coming up, right? And so, although it felt very novel and did come with a little bit of questioning from family and friends, for me, it was something I knew God was speaking to me that I needed to do. I am not sharing this testimony as a way of trying to convince someone that this is something that you should do if that's not what God is leading you to do. But I am a believer that there's some nuggets that you can get from why God called me to do it and what happens when you obey Him in areas that may not be supported by others, but is very clear to you what He's saying. If you recall, I shared that God had already prompted my spirit to do this, but then I logically determined that it, didn't make sense or why I should keep the name. And then later had one of my sons to challenge me on it. And this is like my 4-year-old, 5-year-old at the time challenging me on it. And then I knew, like, okay, God is really speaking to me about this, and also use my son to do it. And, sometimes when God will tell us to do things, we try to rationalize the why, and we want to have reasons and uh, all the things attached to it to make it make sense. And a lot of times that rationale goes out of the door because it really doesn't matter if other people agree with it or not. And I'm not saying that there's not safety in the multitude of counselors, but when you receive a word from God, if it goes against what, your mama said, your sister said, your friend said, then you better pay attention to what God is telling you, right? And so I think it's important to share this piece with you all because the name that He ultimately had me to assume is Kumi, Cumi, and in some references is Koum, Koum, but the meaning is arise. And so I changed my last name to Kumi, which means arise. And in the reference, the scriptural reference is used as Talitha Kumi, which means little girl arise. Talitha, little girl, and Kumi arise. And I often go back to that passage because God spoke to me heavily in the season of Him giving me permission to divorce because of infidelity and a series of infidelities over time, that I questioned Him, right? Because I had been asking for release for quite some time and didn't sense that I had that permission. And then when I did, I justified or tried to rationalize the why, because at the time I felt like, why now? I've been petitioning you on this for some time now. And now you say it when I feel like nothing's happening. Well, this is the thing. We don't always know most times we don't know what's going on the other side of anything, but God does. Like he has the big picture, the elevated view of things, right? He knows it all. So, number one, you end up looking ridiculous if you actually think you have more information than God. You don't. That's the point. Um, Number two, he will speak to you directly through his word. So never think that just because you've read a passage that it has no relevance for you today. You can read the same passage every day for the rest of your life, and he can show you new things every day. That's just how deep and how exhaustive uh, and revelatory God is, that he can do that, right? And so I remember in reading these passages specifically, and God speaking to me about being released and going in faith, right? That your faith has made you whole, and speaking about the woman with the issue of blood. And then also hearing the word later, which is also within that a similar passage, right? Jairus had asked Jesus to come and heal his daughter, right? The little girl, when Jesus spoke to the little girl and said, Talitha Kumi, that was Jairus's daughter. That's where Jesus was heading when the woman with the issue of blood came to Jesus and got her healing, right? And this revelation came to me a while back, and God reminded me of it the other day, which is why I'm sharing it, because he told me to share it. There was 12 years, right, that this woman suffered with the issue of blood, which was a very, very, very um, socially, I think, let's just start with personal issue, damaging personal issue that she had to experience, as well as socially damaging, because you were seen as an outcast, right? If you had this issue, because it's not something that you can hide. And so just remember that context. She's suffering for 12 years. She decides to take it upon herself to go against the crowd, like knowing that she wasn't welcome, knowing that people saw her in a certain light, put all of that aside to pursue her healing. Okay. The level of vulnerability, courage, and insight and passion that it took for her to do that is just beyond, right? To be intentional enough to say, I know that I can be healed. I know I haven't been healed for the past 12 years, but I can be if I can get to Jesus. To have that much faith that I don't even have to like ask him for it. I just need to touch him because I know he's that powerful, right? And then for God to recognize, for Jesus to say, who touched me? Like he knew that it was different than the brushing up against the, like this person touched me believing. They had intention. They knew that I had power that they needed. I felt power leave my body, is what he was saying, right? Who touched me? Okay, so remember that. Keep that in mind, that happened. Remember where his focus was. His focus was to go and heal Jairus's daughter. That's where he was going. But he stopped. Her intention caused him to stop, to speak a word of healing over her and a word of deliverance, right? So that she could move on, not feel guilty about her unclean self touching holiness, because she was touching him with purpose, touching him with desperation, touching him with desire to be healed. And he gave all of that to her and wholeness to her. Not only was she healed, he gave her wholeness. He said, go in faith. Your faith has made you whole. Okay. So that happens. While he's heading to Jairus's daughter to be healed. People come back with a bad report. Basically say, Jairus, y'all might as well turn around. Your daughter's dead. There's no need in wasting Jesus' time with this, okay? Because your daughter's dead. They press on anyway, because Jesus is like, no, she's not dead. She's just sleeping. They get there. The people continue to say, you're wasting your time. She's dead. And laughing, really, like, why are you here? She's dead. What do you think you're going to do? Jesus had to go in, dismiss them, right? Shut the door in order to speak over Jairus' daughter, this little girl, to say, you have been healed and you are good. You are whole. You can eat. Okay. He heals her. He says, Talitha Kumi, little girl, arise. She arises and then she goes to eat. Okay. Why is this significant and how do these two stories relate? Well, the obvious. He's on his way to heal the little girl while he's also aware that somebody is seeking him for healing in the moment. He provides that. He provides that healing. He provides that deliverance. Then he goes to heal the little girl. But this little detail completely just took me to another realm of gratitude to God and understanding of just how intentional God is and how loving he is, that he gives us little details to help us understand just how big he is and just how loving he is and just how intentional and purposeful he is. He tells us how old that little girl was. She was 12 years old. The little girl was 12 years old. The woman with the issue of blood had been dealing with that issue for 12 years. I had previously been in that marriage for 12 years when he released me from it. One could say that was coincidental. One could say, yeah, okay, what's the point? I'm going to tell you, timing matters. That is the point. Timing matters. And when we look at things that are happening in our lives, we may not understand it. We can't make sense of it. We think we should have been released from something a while ago. We think we should have received a blessing in a certain time or season. We don't know the why. We don't know the how. We don't know all the answers. We don't have all the details. But what we can trust is God and his timing and his power and his ability to transcend time in a way that we never could. This little girl was more than likely born around the same time in which this woman started to deal with this issue that she could not cure on her own, that she could not get healing from people. And God made it such that he provided miracles within the same span of time for the same individuals. And why and how? Like we can't even understand or compute all of the reasons why that mattered, why that timing was what it was. But what we do know is that there was a divine time for the woman with the issue of blood, to be healed. There was a divine time for the little girl to be so sick that people thought she was dead, in order for Jesus to heal her and tell her to come forth, to arise. There is a divine time for you to let go of the old, to let go of that old mentality. That woman with the issue of blood had to let go of all the old prognoses that said and diagnoses that said you're going to deal with this for the rest of your life. You can't be healed. It's a lost cause. There has to be a day that you say, I'm done. There, you have to have your own D-Day, okay? You have to have your own I'm done day, your own deliverance day, okay? Your own day to arise. There's a day that's coming for you. And that day is when you decide, that D-Day, your deliverance day, your delivered day, your decision day, D-Day can be today. When you say enough is enough, I'm done. I'm letting it go. I am deciding that I deserve better. I deserve greater. Okay? That D-Day for you may be death, right? Death of the old you and a rising of the new you. People can laugh all they want about your circumstances and what they think is a lost cause, right? Like, why are you coming here? She's dead. Because with God, what seems to be dead, your dreams, your ability to do something that God put in your spirit to do that seems like you will never get that thing done or never be able to have the opportunity that you thought you were going to have, all of that can arise with Jesus. That's what this is about. That's what the hope of glory, right? Like, he is the light. He is the truth. He is your reason to live, right? To shine, to allow God's light to shine through you. And for me, that's what I needed. I didn't know how much was going to be attached to me being obedient about changing my name, but I needed that. I needed to associate myself with the newness of what God had called me to do, because I had been identifying with an older version of me that was no longer alive, dead, numb. Okay. He was calling forth who he created me to be, allowing me to reclaim my identity in him. And so, no, for you, it may not be that you need a new name in order to do that, right? To dissociate yourself from the old, to embrace the new. I needed that. So that's what I did. But for you, it may be that you need to actually make that declaration, D-Day. Maybe it's your day to declare who you are in him, to declare who he's called you to be, and be that. People can think what they want to think. They can say what they want to say. They can continue to laugh about the dead state that they think that you're in. Meanwhile, you and Jesus get that alone time. Let him close the door on the crowd. Let him get you to that place where it's just you and him alone. And let him speak to you. Let him speak over you. And see what happens. Because you won't be the same. You're not going to leave that room as the same person. Let him speak to you. Have an encounter with your God and allow him to change you. Allow him to call you forth. Arise, beloved. Arise, beloved. Arise, beloved. You have work to do. You've been called. I love you. We love you. Just needed to share that. Pray that it bless you. Arise. Kumi Cherie. Until next time.